One question, Francis, that I think we'd love to hear a bit more about is, we know about Simon Baker being appointed about 8 months ago now, and we know that he's already started some kind of circle. Could you explain about how this is happening? We're very curious to know, we have this photography creative in Tate. What is he doing within the Tate that helps photographers and photography?
Okay, that's a very good question. When the trustees, I think in about 2004, said yes, you can have a photography curator, you can collect photography beyond what you're already collecting. The drawback was that you've got to go and find the money to do it. And of course, because we have a fixed pot, and it's a fixed and diminishing pot, it's not growing. So anything we do outside our traditional activities, we have to find additional support for. So the first thing to do was to find some additional support for the curator, and we managed to do that. And what then Simon has had to do, of course with my help and the help of our development team, is find a way of funding the expansion of collecting in relation to photographic media. And we're doing this, we've identified and recruited a number of individuals to help us. So people who are committed to photography, principally collectors, are donating money to Tate on an annual basis, and in exchange for their donation, they become part of an acquisitions committee. This is the first time we've had an acquisitions committee in relation to a medium. We already have acquisition committees devoted to different parts of the world, to Latin America, to the Middle East, to North America. And what the committee does, it enables us to acquire work, but it also, I think, perhaps more importantly, creates a focus for people who are really interested and committed to photography, to meet each other, to meet photographers. And what I think it's doing is it's beginning to, it helps raise the bar of collecting. So for example, within an acquisitions committee, within our acquisitions committee, we have a number of really eminent, established collectors, the kind of people who are putting together the most important collection of photography in the UK. But at the same time on the committee, we have a number of newcomers, people who are really keen, that haven't been collecting for very long, who want to learn about collecting, who have a means to collect, and therefore to put them in this milieu where they're meeting both other collectors, dealers, and photography curators as well as practitioners is a very potent and exciting forum. So Simon is working with that group, and I think he was down here yesterday with some of those committee members. And part of his remit is wherever he goes in the world, he has to tell them he's going there so that they can come too, so they can learn on the hoof. The group is, as I said, it's mostly collectors, but it also does include a number of dealers. And Michael Hoppen, who gave us that fantastic picture that I opened with, is one of the founding members of this committee. And this has been a really interesting and difficult thing to get our heads around, but such was the enthusiasm, for obvious reasons, of key photography dealers in the venture of tape collecting, that they wanted to be involved. So essentially they are part of the community, but unlike individual collectors who have a vote in what we buy, the dealers themselves do not have a vote. So that they're able to give, but they can't take. But they benefit hugely, of course, from the the bigger field, the bigger market, the bigger interest of the museum becoming involved in photography. So that's one thing, collecting. We have now, I think, around £200,000 a year just to spend on photography, which actually is a drop in the ocean. It's a very small amount. But this community, it helps us focus on giving. And so one of Simon's other rules is to encourage people to give from either photographers, though of course it's always, one doesn't want to, one wants to support practitioners as well as ask them to give, but also particularly from collectors. So we're working with a number of collectors who are very generously giving from their collections or helping us acquire work. And the third thing that Simon is doing is he's inputting into the culture of photography across Tate. He's curating exhibitions. He just co-curated the big photography show entitled Exposure that is closing today, I think, at Tate Modern. And he's also curated numerous displays within the galleries, both of Anthony Doffey's works, artist rooms, but also works from the collection. He hung the Bruce Davison portfolio, for example, and working with loans from the V&A and from other national museums.
Excellent. And one last question before I open it up. I'm very curious about this this whole thing of you obviously have a conservator at the Tate, and one of their jobs is, of course, to look at various coloured materials or photography materials, indeed any material that ends up. How much of this has, I don't know who the conservator is, how much have they studied this whole business of the archival thing? I mean, there is this big story that's been running in the art newspaper recently, which is fascinating, about these big Gurskis that are starting to corrupt because they're C-prints or plexiglass, which is quite unstable. I mean, I'm just curious to know to what extent, you mentioned it earlier about you know, respecting the regional integrity, but to what extent is this a matter of debate within your conservation department?
It's a huge matter of debate. It's, not it's a matter of debate within the conservation department, but even more so, it's a matter of debate between conservators and curators. And I think what's interesting is that Simon is, in a way, he's the knowledge he comes with, and his skill set and his position is a very new one inside the museum. We've always regarded at Tate, we've always collected photography regardless of technique. And if you go online and you look at the way we show our photographic holdings on the website, there's nothing about technique. In fact, even preparing, just putting down some images for the talk today, I wasn't able, from our website, to find out exactly the technical specification of any of the works. So, we're very new to the business of thinking about how a work is made and how long it's going to survive. And our conservators are in the business of learning themselves at the moment. They're very hungry to do this, and because it's a wonderful new area for them to build up knowledge in. So at the moment, I would be reluctant as a curator to say, no, we can't acquire this because of its technique. But the one area that, and it's interesting you mentioned Gursky, is the bonding of images onto plexiglass, this front-mounting thing, is clearly a problem. And I think if you know something has a death sentence, it is quite difficult to spend a lot of money on it. And the plexiglass thing, both because it's very easy to mark the surface of the plexiglass, and therefore you damage the feel of the work is damaged, but also in the long term, we're going to get movement between those two surfaces. So I think that is something that slowly we will begin to respond to. But of course, we have lots of Gurskis in the collection that are face-mounted with perspex.
Fascinating. I mean, do any of these photographers want to have this rare opportunity to directly ask Francis before I open it up?
Well, I'm quite happy to talk about the way that I'm presenting these new prints, which I started showing in Cardiff in March, because it seemed to me from the beginning, working with these new pigment prints, that there was a fabulous...
Sorry, Peter, could you speak into the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm just talking about the sort of physical presence of these new pigment prints. I was really struck by the way, when I started working with them, that not only was I dealing with an image, but an object. So the way I chose, so far anyway, to show these prints is to essentially have a frame, which is obviously very conventional, then have a fillet and non-reflective glass, but inside that space, which is like half an inch deep, I'm actually hanging the print simply by the four corners with archival museum tape. And I'm actually really, really enjoying the slight curve on each end, because the sheet of paper, of course, has come off a roll. So that by hanging the print like this, not only do you guarantee that in the future, archivally, you can actually take it away from the man's support very, very easily without damaging it, but also you're enjoying the fact that you have an object and an image simultaneously.
What have you changed your mind about that?
From what point of view?
Well, I mean, we were talking earlier about you've made a group of a portfolio or an edition of work now.
Yes, yes.
And you're obviously interested in technology. You're hugely sensitive to it and its potential.
Yeah.
And what if you come back to those digital files in 20 years' time and find you could do them differently?
Well, then that's another issue. It's another question. But in fact, picking up on your point of intentionality. At the time of conceptualizing the work, this is my intention now. So, you know, I do reserve the right in the future to change my mind. And it seems with your consent.
Okay, any questions from the floor? There you go. Have we got a roving mic? Yes.
Hi, there's a question to Francis about the Tate's collecting policy or future collecting policy. You mentioned quite a few genres of photography that you'd be looking at. I was also wondering if the Tate would be looking at commercial photography or fashion photography as well, because you do already have Jason Evans' Strictly series in your collection. And with that in mind, you spoke about the intention of the artist. So I suppose the question would be, if it was made for commercial purposes, would the intention or the collaborative intention also be considered in that as well? I mean, in its presentation and its recording within the archive.
I'm going to be very don't know-ish about my answer. In fact, several years ago we did a room of current day at Tate Modern. Part of this portfolio of Japanese modernist photography does include some work that was entirely commercially driven, but shows the influence of Bauhaus aesthetics. And I suspect that, as I said, we're never going to acquire or try and represent the whole history of photography, but I feel pretty confident that over the years we will embrace work that, you know, through a kind of connectivity that is either commissioned within a commercial context or made by an artist who works in, you know, you talk about your independent work and your commercial work. Well, in 20 years' time, it may be that people feel happy to blur that difference because they're strong bodies of work, and it's in a way it's a distinction that one should note, but not necessarily regard as a distinction for for preventing work being shown alongside. You know, think about Martin's work, and working in so many different ways. I think those divisions will be eroded, but I doubt whether we'll take on the history of commercial photography as a separate kind of strand.